Jenna and Leela had grown up in the quiet town of Maplewood, a place where everyone knew each other's names and the annual county fair was the highlight of the summer. At 32, Jenna embodied the role of a devoted wife and mother, exuding warmth and kindness. She had married Mark, her high school sweetheart, right after college. They had two children, Ethan, a spirited 7-year-old with a penchant for adventure, and Mia, a gentle 5-year-old who loved to draw and dream. Jenna thrived on routine, often waking before dawn to prepare breakfast and ensuring the kids were ready for school. However, beneath her perfect exterior lay a growing dissatisfaction. Mark worked long hours as a software engineer, leaving Jenna feeling isolated, craving connection and attention. Despite her outwardly happy demeanor, she often found herself yearning for more romance, more excitement, more meaning. Leela, on the other hand, was Jenna's younger sister, a free spirit at 29 who always danced to the beat of her own drum. With a vibrant personality, she seemed to be living the dream, traveling to exotic places and enjoying a string of fleeting relationships. Unlike Jenna, Leela had never felt the need to settle down, opting instead for a life filled with spontaneity and adventure. She worked as a part-time photographer, capturing the world through her lens, yet her career never truly took off. The two sisters were inseparable in their youth, but as life progressed, their paths diverged. Jenna often felt a twinge of envy at Leela's carefree lifestyle, while Leela secretly admired Jenna's commitment to family. Their relationship, though strong, had always been tinged with unspoken jealousy and unresolved tensions. On a crisp autumn afternoon, the vibrant leaves crunched underfoot as Jenna prepared for the annual Maplewood Harvest Festival. Excitement buzzed in the air, yet a sense of unease settled within her. Mark had promised to be home early, but as the hours passed, Jenna felt her hopes fading. She busied herself with decorations, arranging pumpkins and hay bales, trying to distract herself from the gnawing worry that had become a constant companion. The festival was meant to be a celebration, yet Jenna felt increasingly alone. When Mark finally arrived home, his demeanor suggested he had been somewhere else, mentally and emotionally. He greeted the kids with a smile but barely acknowledged Jenna. That night, as they put the children to bed, Jenna caught a fleeting glimpse of Mark's phone, which buzzed with incoming messages. She tried to shake off her instincts, telling herself she was being paranoid. After all, they were supposed to be enjoying a fun evening together. As the festival unfolded, Jenna plastered a smile on her face, hoping to distract herself from her nagging doubts. The following week, the arrival of a new character would set the stage for everything to come. Lisa, a stunning woman in her mid-30s, moved into the neighborhood. With her effortless charm and radiant smile, she quickly became the talk of Maplewood. Jenna first met Lisa at the local coffee shop, where she found her chatting animatedly with other moms. Lisa's vivacity was infectious, and Jenna felt drawn to her even as a flicker of envy sparked within her. Lisa had a magnetic personality that drew people in, and soon she began attending social gatherings and playdates with the children. At first, Jenna welcomed Lisa's presence, grateful for a new friend who seemed to have an understanding of the mundane struggles of motherhood. Lisa shared stories of her own life, revealing that she had recently divorced and moved to Maplewood for a fresh start. As the weeks rolled on, Mark and Lisa crossed paths more frequently, exchanging friendly banter that Jenna tried to brush off as harmless. Yet every time she caught a glimpse of their interaction, a nagging feeling grew within her. It was as if Lisa represented everything Jenna longed for: freedom, spontaneity, and an excitement that had faded from her own life. The festival marked a turning point in their relationships. As Jenna set up the booth for the pumpkin contest, she felt Mark's presence nearby, accompanied by Lisa. The three engaged in casual conversation, but Jenna couldn't shake the sense that something was amiss. She noticed the way Lisa laughed at Mark's jokes, how their eyes sparkled with an energy that Jenna hadn't seen in their interactions for months. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the festivities, Jenna felt a pang of insecurity twist in her stomach. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Jenna and Mark sat on the porch, sipping lukewarm coffee. She mustered the courage to broach the subject of Lisa. "She's quite a character, isn't she?" Jenna ventured, trying to keep her tone light. Mark shrugged, his gaze drifting towards the stars. "Yeah, she seems fun. Just a neighbor trying to fit in, I guess." But Jenna felt a disconnect, as if they were speaking different languages. She wanted Mark to understand the weight of her worries, but instead he seemed distracted, lost in thoughts she couldn't reach. As days passed, Jenna's unease morphed into obsession, and she began to monitor Mark's interactions with Lisa more closely, searching for signs of anything beyond friendship. One evening, while cleaning the house, Jenna noticed Mark's phone left on the kitchen counter, a rare occurrence. Her heart raced as she picked it up, debating whether or not to unlock it. She hesitated, but ultimately gave in to temptation, her fingers trembling as she typed in the familiar code. What she found made her blood run cold. A series of flirtatious messages exchanged between Mark and Lisa laid bare an intimacy that made her stomach churn. The messages were filled with playful emojis and inside jokes, and one particularly damning message read, "Can't wait to see you again. Just us." The realization hit Jenna like a thunderbolt. The cozy life she thought she had was nothing but a facade, and the betrayal ran deeper than she could have imagined. Anger, heartbreak, and disbelief surged through her as she processed the betrayal of her husband and her sister's friend. She felt the walls closing in around her, the weight of her world crashing down. Jenna slammed the phone down, the sound echoing through the empty house. Feeling an overwhelming urge to confront Leela, Jenna knew she had to face the truth head-on. That night, as she lay awake in bed, she formulated a plan. She would confront Leela the next day, seeking answers and clarity, but deep down, she feared the fallout of what she might discover. The revelation had shattered her seemingly perfect life, leaving her with questions that would lead to devastating consequences. The seeds of conflict had been sown, and as the sun rose over Maplewood, Jenna prepared herself for the confrontation that would change everything. She steeled herself for what was to come, uncertain of the strength she would need to face the betrayal of those she loved most. In that moment, she knew her life would never be the same again. The warmth of the morning sun felt distant, and the shadows of doubt loomed large. The days following Jenna's discovery of the messages between Mark and Lisa felt like a dark cloud had settled over her life. She navigated her daily routine with a facade of normalcy, but inside, a storm of emotions raged. Her heart ached with betrayal, and jealousy twisted into a sharp dagger that pierced her thoughts. Every time Mark left for work, she wondered if he would meet Lisa instead of heading to the office. The uncertainty consumed her. On Tuesday afternoon, Jenna decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed answers, and Leela was the only person who could provide them. She texted her sister, suggesting they meet for coffee at their favorite cafe in the town square. Leela responded enthusiastically, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. As Jenna drove to the cafe, her heart raced with anxiety. She envisioned the conversation, rehearsing the words in her mind, but the reality was far more complicated than a simple dialogue. Would Leela deny everything? Would she throw accusations back at Jenna? Would Mark side with Leela if things escalated? The myriad of possible outcomes twisted in her stomach like a knot. When Jenna arrived at the cafe, she spotted Leela at a table near the window, her camera resting beside her half-empty cup of coffee. Leela looked radiant, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, exuding a carefree aura. Jenna felt a wave of envy crash over her, but she pushed it aside. This was about more than jealousy. It was about the integrity of her marriage and the bond she had with her sister. "Hey, Jen," Leela greeted her, standing up to embrace her. Jenna returned the hug, but felt a pang of discomfort. As they sat down, Jenna's mind raced, searching for the right moment to bring up the subject that loomed over them. "I've been meaning to talk to you," Jenna finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Leela replied, taking a sip of her coffee, blissfully unaware of the impending confrontation. Jenna hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's about Mark and you." The mention of Mark made Leela's eyes widen slightly. "What about him?" she asked, her tone shifting to one of cautious curiosity. Jenna took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I found some messages on Mark's phone. Between him and you." Leela's face fell, a flicker of guilt crossing her features. "What messages?" she asked, attempting to sound nonchalant. Jenna pressed on, her voice low. "Flirtatious messages. It seems like there's something going on between you two." Leela's expression morphed from surprise to defensiveness. "That's ridiculous, Jenna. Mark and I are just friends. You know how he is. He's always been friendly. But this is different, Leela," Jenna insisted, leaning forward. "You can't tell me that what you have is just friendship." The tension between them crackled like electricity, and Jenna felt the anger rising. Leela's demeanor shifted from shocked to defiant. "What are you trying to say? Are you accusing me of something?" "I just want the truth." "You owe me that much?" Jenna shot back, feeling the heat of rage bubbling over. As they argued, Jenna noticed a familiar figure walking past the cafe window. Mark was on his phone, a serious look on his face. Panic washed over her as she recalled the secret meeting she had imagined him having with Lisa. What if he was on his way to see her right now? "Jenna, calm down," Leela said, trying to diffuse the situation. "There's nothing going on. You're just being paranoid." Jenna's heart raced as she shot up from her chair. "I can't believe you'd say that. I saw the messages, Leela. You can't deny it." Leela looked flustered, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. "Okay, maybe there were a few texts, but they meant nothing. I would never come between you two." "Yet here we are," Jenna exclaimed, her voice a mixture of hurt and anger. "How could you do this to me? To your sister?" Just then, the cafe door swung open and Mark walked in, scanning the room until his gaze landed on Jenna and Leela. His expression hardened as he strode towards their table. "Hey, what's going on?" Mark asked, his voice laced with confusion and concern. "I got your message, Jenna." The three of them sat in a tense silence, each grappling with their secrets and unspoken truths. Jenna felt trapped, as if the walls were closing in around her. This was supposed to be a moment of confrontation, yet here they were, standing on the precipice of something far more dangerous. "I was just telling Leela that I know about the texts," Jenna finally admitted, her voice shaky. Mark's eyes widened and Leela shifted in her seat, looking between the two of them. "What texts?" he asked, his tone suddenly sharp. "The text between you and Leela," Jenna stated, her heart pounding. "This has to stop. I deserve to know what's really happening." Mark's face flushed with anger. "What the hell are you talking about? There's nothing going on." Jenna felt her breath quicken as emotions surged within her. "You both are lying. I can't believe you would betray me like this." The argument escalated, voices rising as the tension reached a breaking point. Each accusation hurled felt like a dagger, slicing through the fabric of their relationships. Jenna's jealousy morphed into a whirlwind of paranoia, and in the heat of the moment, she feared she might lose both Mark and Leela forever. As the confrontation spiraled out of control, Jenna felt a strange urge to leave the cafe to escape the suffocating atmosphere. She stormed out, Mark's voice calling after her, but she didn't turn back. Outside, she took a deep breath, her mind racing. What if Mark was still seeing Lisa? What if Leela was lying? That night, Jenna found herself unable to sleep, consumed by thoughts of betrayal and heartbreak. She couldn't shake the feeling of paranoia that had taken root within her, gnawing at her sanity. The next day, she resolved to confront Lisa directly to seek answers that had eluded her. Unbeknownst to Jenna, however, her confrontation would set off a chain of events that would change everything. The following afternoon, Jenna stood outside Lisa's apartment, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. She had finally decided to confront the woman she suspected of tearing her family apart. The idea of facing Lisa filled her with anxiety, but she needed closure, regardless of the outcome. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the door, her knuckles brushing the wood. The seconds felt like an eternity before Lisa finally answered, her bright smile faltering as she saw Jenna's serious expression. "Jenna." "What surprise," Lisa said, her voice light but with a hint of trepidation. "Can we talk?" Jenna asked, stepping past her into the small, stylish apartment. The air was thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and a hint of vanilla. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Lisa asked, her eyes wide with fox innocence. Jenna turned to face her, the tension in her body palpable. "I know about you and Mark." Lisa's demeanor shifted immediately, the warmth in her eyes replaced by a guarded look. "What do you mean?" "The messages," Jenna stated, her voice shaking with emotion. "The flirtation. I saw it all." For a moment, they stood in silence, the reality of the situation settling around them like a heavy fog. Jenna's heart raced as she watched Lisa's face. She was calculating her next move, and Jenna could sense it. "Jenna, listen," Lisa began, her voice cool and calm. "It's not what you think. Mark and I, don't lie to me." Jenna interrupted, the anger boiling over. "I deserve the truth." Lisa hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Fine. Mark and I have spent time together. He's a great guy and he's been there for me after my divorce. But it's nothing serious." The denial only fueled Jenna's rage. "You think I'm going to believe that? You've been flirting with my husband right under my nose." "Jenna, you're being irrational," Lisa said, a smirk creeping onto her face. "You should really consider what's happening in your own life before pointing fingers at someone else." The words struck Jenna like a slap. Suddenly, the anger coursing through her veins turned into something more primal. She could feel the tension crackling in the air, almost palpable. In a moment of rage, Jenna grabbed a ceramic mug from the kitchen counter and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, sending shards flying. Lisa stepped back, her eyes wide with shock. "Stop this. Just admit you've been trying to come between us," Jenna shouted, her heart pounding in her chest. Before Lisa could respond, Jenna felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her. In that chaotic moment, everything blurred, the anger, the betrayal, the fear of losing her family. Without thinking, Jenna lunged at Lisa, shoving her hard. Lisa stumbled backward, her balance faltering as she hit the edge of the kitchen island. Time seemed to slow down as Jenna watched horror-stricken, realizing the deadly trajectory of her actions. Lisa lost her footing, falling with a sickening thud against the corner of the counter. A sharp scream escaped her lips, followed by a stunned silence that enveloped the room like a shroud. Jenna stood frozen, her heart racing as she processed what had just happened. "Oh my God, Lisa," she gasped, rushing to her side. Lisa lay motionless, her eyes wide with shock, blood pooling around her head. Panic surged through Jenna's body as reality crashed down upon her like a wave. She hadn't intended to hurt her. It had been an accident, a moment fueled by rage that spiraled out of control. "Someone call an ambulance," Jenna shouted, her voice trembling. She grabbed her phone, but her hands were shaking too violently to dial. All she could think about was how quickly everything had escalated, and now life hung in the balance. Just then, she heard footsteps approaching from the hallway. Mark appeared in the doorway, his expression turning from confusion to horror as he took in the scene before him. "Jenna, what happened?" he demanded, rushing forward to kneel beside Lisa. "It was an accident. I did mean to," Jenna cried, her voice breaking as she realized the enormity of what she had done. Mark's eyes darted between Lisa and Jenna, a mixture of shock and disbelief clouding his features. "We need to call 911, he said, his voice steadier than she expected. He grabbed Jenna's phone and dialed. As the sirens wailed in the distance, a wave of despair washed over Jenna. She had let her emotions get the better of her, and now someone lay seriously injured, perhaps dying. The gravity of the situation felt unbearable, and her mind raced with thoughts of how everything could change in an instant. In the moments that followed, the apartment filled with the sound of sirens and the chaos of paramedics arriving. Jenna stood back, watching as they worked on Lisa, fear and guilt coiling around her like a vice. She felt as though she were trapped in a nightmare, unable to wake up. After what felt like an eternity, the paramedics managed to stabilize Lisa and rush her out of the apartment on a stretcher. Mark followed closely behind, throwing one last look at Jenna, an expression of disbelief etched on his face that cut deeper than any knife. Alone in the empty apartment, Jenna felt the weight of her actions bearing down on her. She had crossed a line she could never uncross, and now the repercussions would reverberate through every aspect of her life. In the following days, news spread through Maplewood like wildfire. The incident was all anyone could talk about. Jenna felt like a pariah, isolated and ashamed. As the investigation unfolded, she tried to explain that it had been an accident, but nothing seemed to matter. The whispers and accusations followed her everywhere. Eventually, she found herself in a courtroom surrounded by the very people she once considered friends. The trial became a spectacle, a testament to the darkest side of human emotion, jealousy, betrayal, and the consequences of unchecked anger. As the prosecution laid out its case, Jenna listened to every word, her heart heavy with guilt. They painted her as a monster, a woman driven to violence by jealousy. The defense argued that it had been an unintentional act fueled by a moment of heated emotion. When the verdict was finally read, Jenna felt as though the world around her had collapsed. She was found guilty of manslaughter, an accident that had cost another person their life.